His name, I found out later, was Brandon. But in that moment, he was just a pair of terrified eyes floating above a shaking handgun. The alley behind the superstore where I work always smells like wet cardboard and grease from the burger joint next door. That night you could add the metallic scent of pure, undiluted fear to the mix, and it wasn't coming from me. He had the barrel pressed right into the skin between my eyebrows. It was cold. I could feel the little circular impression it was making. But the thing is, he was trembling so violently that the gun was jittering, tapping against my skull like a nervous woodpecker. He was just a kid, maybe 20, with tears carving clean tracks through the grime on his face. He tried to say something, probably "give me your wallet," but his teeth were chattering too hard for the words to form properly. And I looked at him, this boy trying to play the part of a monster, and I saw he was infinitely more terrified of what he was doing than I was of what was being done to me. That's when the bubble of absurdity inside my chest just popped. I laughed. It wasn't loud. It was a short, sharp bark of a laugh, completely involuntary. He flinched, his eyes widening even further as if my laughter was the most shocking thing that had happened all night. In that second, I wasn't his victim. I was something he couldn't understand. And that was worse. The sirens were a relief, not for me, but for him. The moment the blue and red lights started strobing against the alley walls, Brandon just sort of deflated. The gun clattered to the pavement, and he slid down the grimy brick wall, burying his face in his hands. His sobs were ragged and ugly. He didn't even look up when the cops yelled at him to get on the ground. He was already there. The police station was worse than the alley. The fear in the alley was real, it was human. The station was just beige. Beige walls, beige linoleum, the smell of stale coffee and disinfectant. I sat on a hard plastic chair for what felt like hours, giving my statement to a detective named Miller. He had a tired face and a notepad, and he kept clicking his pen. "So you're saying he didn't threaten you verbally?" Click. "He tried to, I think he was crying." Crying, click, and you laughed. He didn't look up from his pad when he said it, but the word hung in the air between us. "It wasn't, I mean it was a reaction. Shock maybe," I said, the words feeling like a lie the moment they left my mouth. How do you explain the sheer brain-breaking absurdity of looking into the eyes of your own would-be attacker and seeing nothing but a terrified child? How do you explain that the situation felt so pathetic it was almost funny? "Right, shock," Miller said, writing it down. Click, click. "Most people scream or cry or freeze. Laughing is unusual." He wasn't accusing me of anything, not really, but I could feel it, the subtle shift in the room. I was no longer just the victim, I was the weird victim. The one who didn't react right. I was a puzzle piece that didn't fit the picture of how these things are supposed to go. They gave me a pamphlet on victim support services and sent me home in a taxi. The sun was coming up. The streets were filling with people going to their normal jobs, living their normal lives. I unlocked my apartment door and everything was exactly as I'd left it. But when I looked in the hallway mirror, I didn't recognize the person looking back. Something in my eyes had gone flat and cold. For 3 days, I tried to pretend it didn't happen. I went to work, stacked boxes of cereal and canned soup, and said, "Have a nice day," to customers. But the memory was like a piece of grit in my eye. I couldn't ignore it. The feeling of the gun, the sound of my own laugh, Brandon's terrified, tear-streaked face, it just kept replaying. Sleep wasn't an escape, it was a highlight reel. On the fourth night, I couldn't take it anymore. I was sitting in the dark, nursing a cheap whiskey, and I did what people do now when they're screaming into a void and hoping anyone screams back. I opened my laptop, went to Reddit, and found a forum called True Off My Chest. I made a throwaway account and just typed. The title was "I laughed when a kid tried to rob me at gunpoint and I think I broke him." I didn't hold back. I wrote about the smell of the alley, the way the gun trembled, the sheer patheticness of the whole situation. I described his tears and my laugh in unflinching detail. I wrote about how the cops looked at me like I was the strange one. I ended with a simple question: has anyone else ever had a reaction that made no sense? Am I a monster? I hit post and immediately felt a wave of nausea. What the hell was I doing, putting this out there for the world to judge? I almost deleted it. But then the first comment came in. "Holy shit, you're not a monster, you're a survivor. Trauma does weird things to the brain." Then another, "That kid was more scared of himself than you." Your laugh probably just confirmed everything he was already thinking about his own failure. And another, "I'm a cop, we see this. It's called paradoxical reaction, totally normal. Don't let anyone make you feel weird about it." The replies started pouring in. Dozens, then hundreds. People shared their own stories of bizarre reactions to trauma, giggling at funerals, making jokes after a car crash. For a few hours, I wasn't alone in my beige room. I was connected to this anonymous constellation of strangers who, for a moment, understood. I started replying, answering questions. No, I don't know why he did it. Yes, I worked the night shift at a big box store, nothing glamorous. No, I don't feel like a hero, I feel empty. It felt good, like lancing a wound, but I didn't know then that I was only draining the surface infection. The real poison was much, much deeper. The initial comfort from the online validation was like a weak painkiller. It wore off fast, leaving the ache behind, only deeper this time. The internet's attention span is short. The thread got buried under new, more interesting traumas, and I was alone again in my apartment, which was starting to feel less like a home and more like a holding cell. And in that cell, the memory began to rot. It wasn't a clean replay anymore, it was a director's cut from hell. My laugh started to change. At first, it was just in my head, a subtle shift in tone. Was it really just a short, involuntary bark, or was it louder, harsher? Then I started to see it. I'd close my eyes and be back in the alley, only this time I was watching myself from Brandon's perspective. I saw my own face twist into a cruel, mocking grin. My laugh wasn't a sound of shock. It was a weapon, a booming, hideous noise that echoed off the brick walls, designed to humiliate. In this new version, Brandon's tears weren't just from fear. They were from the agony of being shattered by my contempt. This grotesque remix felt more real than the original. It fit a narrative I was starting to build about myself. That I was fundamentally broken. I went down the dark rabbit hole of late-night Googling. Lack of empathy, emotional blunting after trauma, signs of a sociopath. Every listicle and pop psychology article became a mirror. I started taking a grim inventory of my entire life. That time I felt more annoyed than sad at my great aunt's funeral. Evidence. The flicker of irritation I felt when a coworker cried over a breakup. Evidence. My entire quiet, solitary life, which I'd always thought of as peaceful, now seemed like the carefully managed habitat of a predator. The world became a minefield of triggers. I started avoiding my own reflection, turning my head when I passed the polished freezer doors at work. The sound of laughter, any laughter, from a sitcom on a neighbor's TV to a child giggling in the cereal aisle, made my stomach clench and my skin feel cold. My apartment became a cave, the blinds stayed down, dishes piled up in the sink. The question, "Why did you laugh?" was no longer a point of confusion, it was an accusation. It was a splinter in my brain, and I knew the only way to get it out was to dig. I had to know who Brandon was. I had to know why a terrified, crying kid would choose my head of all the heads in the world to press a gun against. I started where everyone starts, the internet. The local news websites had a short article about the incident. Attempted robbery foiled, suspect in custody. Brandon's name was mentioned, his age, and the charges. His mugshot was there. He looked even younger and more lost than he had in the alley. There were a few angry comments below the article, mostly from people demanding harsher sentences. Nothing useful, so I went deeper. I typed his full name into a social media search bar. It took some digging. His own profiles were either private or deleted, but I found him tagged in other people's photos. Family gatherings, birthday parties. I saw pictures of him with a woman who looked like his mother and another young woman, maybe a year or two older, who had the same wide, dark eyes. Her name was Olivia. I clicked on her profile. It was public. I scrolled through pictures of her with friends at the beach holding a cat, standard stuff. Then I hit a photo from about a year and a half ago. It was a group shot of employees in the break room of a superstore, my superstore. And there in the back row, wearing the same ugly blue vest I wore every night, was Olivia. My blood went cold. It was a coincidence. It had to be. We're a huge employer in this town. Hundreds of people cycle through here every year. I wouldn't have even worked the same shift as her. I told myself that over and over, but I couldn't shake the feeling. It was the first piece of the puzzle that didn't fit with the random act of violence, narrative everyone had been feeding me. I scrolled further down her page, my heart pounding a low, heavy rhythm against my ribs. Most of her posts were generic memes, life updates. But then I found a post from a little over a year ago. There was no picture, just a block of text. "Well, that's it. Got fired today over some bullshit inventory error." So much for team members. Some people will throw you under the bus to save their own skin without a second thought. Guess it's back to job hunting. The date on the post was October 12th. I didn't need to check my records. I knew that date. I felt it in my gut like a punch. That was the night of the big quarterly inventory, the night everything went wrong, the night I made a choice. I didn't have to force the memory. It came rushing back, unlocked by the key of her name. October 12th, it was a miserable night. Corporate was breathing down our necks, the new scanning system was glitching, and everyone was on edge. I was the acting night supervisor, which was just a fancy title for the guy who gets all the blame. We were doing the electronics section. High-value items, everything had to be perfect. Around 3 a.m., we realized the count was off. way off. A whole pallet of new-release video games thousands of dollars worth was unaccounted for. Panic set in. The store manager, a hard-ass named Peterson, made it clear that if we didn't find the error, someone's job was on the line. We spent 2 hours tearing the stockroom apart, and we found it. The pallet had been scanned into the system but never physically moved from the receiving bay. It was a simple, stupid mistake, human error. I checked the scanner logs. The employee who had logged the pallet in was Olivia. I remember her standing there, looking pale under the fluorescent lights. She was a good worker, quiet, never caused trouble. "I swear I thought I moved it," she said, her voice trembling a little. "The bay was so crowded I must have gotten distracted. And I had a choice, a clear, simple choice. I could have said it was a system glitch, a team error, something vague. Peterson would have yelled, but it would have spread the blame. No one would have been fired, or I could tell the precise truth. I could follow the data, point to the log, name the name. It was the clean, efficient, self-preserving thing to do. It would prove I was a competent supervisor who had located the source of the problem. I chose the truth. I wrote up the incident report exactly as the log showed. Error in receiving, pallet not moved to floor by employee Olivia M. I didn't think of it as throwing her under the bus. I thought of it as being accurate. It was just a line in a report, a fact, a small, sterile act of professional ass-covering. She was fired the next day. I remember feeling a brief, faint pang of guilt, which I quickly smothered with the justification that I had just done my job. Then I forgot about her completely, until now. The screen of my laptop glowed in the dark room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I went back to my Reddit post, the one that had brought me so much temporary comfort. It felt like a lifetime ago. I scrolled past the comments calling me a hero, past the ones analyzing my trauma. I clicked edit. Update, I think I know why he did it. I'm adding this because I feel like I have to. I feel like I've been lying to all of you and to myself. His sister Olivia, she used to work with me. About a year ago, there was an inventory screw-up. It was her mistake, a simple one, but it was on paper. I was the shift supervisor. I could have fudged the report, called it a team error. But I didn't. I put her name on it. I did it to make sure none of the blame landed on me. She was fired. I had completely, utterly forgotten about this until tonight. I never connected the dots. I never even thought about her again. I just did my job, saved my own ass, and moved on. He wasn't a random mugger. He was a kid whose family was probably struggling because of a decision I made. A decision that was so small to me, I literally erased it from my memory. I'm looking back at what I wrote about my laugh, about it being absurd. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe some deep, dark part of my brain recognized him. Maybe I looked at his face, saw his family's pain staring back at me, and my first reaction wasn't fear or empathy. It was the laugh of a man who knows he's gotten away with something. The laugh of a coward. I hit save. There was no relief this time, no feeling of connection, just a cold, heavy certainty. The comments that followed were different. The sympathy was gone, replaced by a quiet, simmering judgment. Some people were angry. "So you ruined her life and then laughed in her brother's face? Wow." Others were more philosophical. "This is how it happens, 1,000 tiny cuts." I didn't reply to any of them. They were right. I wasn't the victim who had stumbled upon a dark truth about the world. I was the dark truth. A week passed. The Reddit post went silent. My world had shrunk to the four walls of my apartment. I called in sick to work, telling them I had the flu. The thought of walking back into that building, past the electronics section, past the break room where Olivia once sat, felt impossible. Then an email appeared in my inbox. The subject line was just my name. It was from an address I didn't recognize. My first instinct was to delete it, to assume it was spam, but my cursor hovered over it. With a sense of dread that felt like swallowing glass, I clicked it open. "Mr. Henderson," it began, "I am Brandon and Olivia's mother. I found your email through a former coworker of Olivia's who saw your post online. I am not writing to you to threaten you or to excuse what my son did. What he did was wrong, and he will face the consequences for it. I am writing because I need you to know the truth is never as simple as a single mistake on an inventory report." After Olivia lost her job at the store, she couldn't find anything else that paid as well. She had to drop out of her community college classes. The shame of it ate at her. She fell into a deep depression. She is getting help now, but it has been a long, hard year for her, for all of us. Brandon has his own struggles. He has severe anxiety. He sees the world in black and white, in heroes and villains. In his mind, you became the man who destroyed his sister. He saw her crying night after night, saw our family struggling to pay bills, and he fixated on you. He found out your shift schedule. He thought if he could just scare you, if he could take something from you, it would somehow balance the scales. It was a sick, desperate idea from a sick, desperate boy. He never would have hurt you. He barely knows how to handle that gun which he stole from his grandfather's house. I don't know why you laughed at him. Maybe you are a cruel man. Maybe you were just scared. It doesn't matter now. The damage is done. I only hope that someday you understand that the small, easy choices you make can be earthquakes in other people's lives." The email ended there. No signature. I read it once, then twice, then a third time. Each word was a perfectly placed stone, building a wall around me, bricking me into the reality of what I had done. The story wasn't about a boy with a gun anymore. It wasn't about my weird laugh. It was about a chain reaction of quiet, mundane cruelty. My casual, bureaucratic act of self-preservation was the first domino. The rest just fell one by one until they landed in a heap in a greasy alleyway. The abyss I had been staring into wasn't the world's darkness. It was the reflection of my own. Brandon took a plea deal, attempted robbery, illegal possession of a firearm. He'll be in a juvenile facility for a year with mandatory therapy. I know this because his mother emailed me one last time to tell me. I didn't reply. I quit my job the next day. I just walked in, handed my badge and vest to a bewildered Peterson, and walked out without a word. I couldn't stand the smell of the place anymore, the floor polish, the popcorn, the faint, lingering scent of my own cowardice. I didn't get hurt that night in the alley, not in any way you could see. There are no scars, but I lost something that feels more essential than skin. I lost the ability to see myself as a good person or even a neutral one. I lost the comfort of believing that my actions are small and contained. Now I see the connections everywhere. I see the tired-looking cashier at the grocery store and wonder what casual cruelty from her boss is making her life a quiet hell. I see the guy raging in traffic and wonder what small injustice tipped him over the edge. I see the world not as a collection of individuals, but as a vast, terrifyingly interconnected web of cause and effect. And I know that a single, thoughtless twitch on one side of the web can wreck a life on the other. I never got an answer to my question, why did I laugh? But I don't think it matters anymore. Whether it was shock or cruelty or some monstrous subconscious recognition, the result is the same. I stood on the edge of someone else's abyss, and the only thing I did was laugh as they fell in. I didn't get shot, but a part of me died in that alley anyway. That was the cost.